Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the book of Proverbs. We're going to look past the simple one-liners and really try to unlock the rich, complex wisdom that's hiding just beneath the surface. Now, I'm sure many of us have heard verses just like this one. You've probably seen them on a coffee mug or a poster. But here's the thing. There's a very specific way to read them to get their true depth. They aren't just inspirational quotes. They're actually tiny pieces of a much larger, more intricate puzzle. Right, so the key isn't just about reading the words on the page. It's about knowing the rules of the game, Learning how to interpret this ancient poetic text so we can see what the original authors really intended. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through a 5-step guide based on the incredible insights of Dr. Fred Putnam that shows us exactly how to read a proverb. Think of this as our key to unlocking all that ancient wisdom. Okay, first things first. The absolute foundation for understanding Proverbs is coming at it with the right mindset from the get-go. Seriously, if you don't get this part right, the rest of the steps just won't work. What's so interesting is that Proverbs actually tells you its own prerequisite for learning, and when it talks about fear, it's not talking about being terrified, not at all. It means respect, honor, a humble willingness to just pay attention to the advice that's about to be given. The book explains this using a really cool poetic tool called antithetical parallelism. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying you reveal something's meaning by showing what it's not. So, to fear the Lord is to respect wisdom. And the opposite of that, the fool, who despises and looks down on that exact same instruction. That contrast makes the meaning absolutely crystal clear. So, the bottom line is this. Understanding comes after a willingness to obey. You have to be ready to learn before you can truly learn. You can't just analyze these texts from a distance. You've got to approach them with this humble, ready-to-act attitude. Okay, let's move on to our next step and see how this all builds. We have to understand the very structure of how a proverb is written. These aren't just random sentences, They are carefully, brilliantly crafted poetic couplets. A classic example is Proverbs 10:1. When you put the terms side by side, the main message just pops. Wise versus foolish, glad versus grief. But, hang on a second. Notice how it also pairs father and mother? Why do that? This is where it gets really interesting. The specific word choices are totally intentional. They're inviting us to slow down and think about the nuances. Maybe fathers and mothers experience pride and sorrow in different ways. Perhaps a father's gladness is more about outward pride, while a mother's grief is a deeper, more personal kind of sorrow. The poetic structure basically forces us to ask these deeper questions. And that brings us perfectly to our next point. Every single proverb is way more than just a saying. It's an entire story packed into a few words. I love this analogy. Think of a proverb as a compressed sponge. It's a whole novel about family dynamics, success, failure, all squeezed into maybe a dozen words. Our job as the reader is to add water, which is our thought and our imagination, to unfold it and see the much, much larger principle inside. And we do this by going from the literal text to its universal application. See, the proverb isn't just about a biological son and a father. No, it applies to any relationship of mentorship, a teacher and a student, a coach and an athlete. This ability to stretch its meaning is what gives the proverb its real power and authority. But, and this is a big but, to unpack that proverbial sponge correctly, we have to use the right kind of water, and that means understanding the world it came from. Here's the trap. If we only apply our modern, 21st century experiences, we risk completely twisting the intended meaning. It's so easy to impose our own values onto a 3,000-year-old text without even realizing we're doing it. Let me give you a perfect example. This proverb about a buyer seems to be describing someone who's just flat out lying, right? But it's not if you understand the ancient culture of haggling. This back and forth was a normal, expected part of the game of negotiation. It wasn't seen as a moral failure. Without that context, we get the verse completely wrong. So, understanding the original climate, the culture, the language, it's absolutely crucial. To them, clouds and wind without rain wasn't just a gloomy afternoon. It was a disaster for their crops. The meaning is completely tied to their world, not ours. So once we have the right attitude, we understand the structure, and we've got the context down, now we can see the ultimate purpose of Proverbs, to act as our personal counselors. Take this verse, for instance. At first glance, it seems like a pretty simple, self-evident observation. I mean, of course, people are happy when good things happen and bad people are gone. So what? Well, here's the secret to Proverbs. There are no throwaway lines. Every single observation, no matter how obvious it seems, is designed to guide our actions. It's not just stating a fact, it's giving us advice. That proverb is implicitly asking us a question. Hey, what kind of city do you want to live in? One that's full of rejoicing or one that's full of mourning? It's counseling us to get to work and actively create a society that's rooted in justice, because that's the only kind of place where genuine joy can actually happen. So, to sum it all up, Proverbs isn't some dusty old rulebook or a collection of fortune cookie sayings. It's a dynamic training manual. It's a collection of active counselors offering timeless advice on how to live wisely. By using these tools, we move way beyond just a surface-level reading, and we begin a much deeper, more rewarding conversation with ancient wisdom. And that leaves us with the real question: what will we hear when we finally learn how to listen?